So, in 2023, United made £648 million in revenue.
That is a lot of guacamole.
But where did all that revenue come from? Well, there's three main ways United make their money. Number one, commercial, which is mainly sponsorships and shirt sales. Number two, broadcasting, which is mainly TV rights. And number three, matchday revenues, which is mainly ticket sales. Now, let's dive into each of these and we'll start with matchday. So, ticket sales is probably the most obvious way United make their money. The football team play their games at Old Trafford and thousands of people buy tickets to watch the games in the stadium. Now, it's important to realise that United actually sell those tickets in two different buckets. You've got season ticket sales and non-season ticket sales. Now, to calculate revenue from season ticket sales, you just need to calculate the number of season ticket holders times the average season ticket price. So in 2023, before the season even began, United sold around 50,000 season tickets, and the average price of a season ticket was around £741, which means United made around £37 million from season ticket sales. Now, this chart here shows us how average season ticket prices have changed for Premier League clubs over the last decade, and as we can see, United's average season ticket price hasn't moved over the last 10 years, which is pretty remarkable, right? United could easily lift their prices and lift their own revenues every year, but fair play to them, they haven't made their most loyal fans pay more and more every year for season tickets, even though they probably could have, like Villa have. Okay, so that's season ticket revenue. But what about tickets that get sold to non-season ticket holders? Well, to calculate this, it's another fairly simple equation. It's the number of home matches played times the average number of tickets sold per game times the average ticket price. So, in terms of home matches played, United have the standard 19 Premier League home games every year. And then depending on how far United get in cup competitions, they'll have anywhere between 5 to 15 more home games. Now, 2023 was a great year for United in terms of cup competitions. They won the Carabao Cup, they were runners-up in their FA Cup. So in 2023, United actually played 33 home games in total. Now, in terms of tickets sold per game, Old Trafford has a capacity of around 75,000. We've just seen United have around 50,000 season ticket holders, which means around 25,000 non-season tickets are sold for every home game. Okay, and the final part of the equation is the average price per ticket. Now this can vary from £30 all the way up to hundreds of pounds, but the average ticket price is around £100. And so if we actually do this sum, we can see that United made around £83 million from non-season ticket sales in 2023. Now, on top of all of these ticket sales, you've got all the food and drink the supporters are buying at Old Trafford. And so if we add this on, that's how United made their £136 million from matchday revenues in 2023. Now, as the chart shows us, last year was a great year because of United's cup performances, but usually matchday revenues are in the 90 to 110 million range. COVID was obviously a slight exception when there were no tickets being sold at all. Okay, let's move on. Now, the second revenue stream we'll look at is broadcasting. And this revenue comes from the fact that the supporters in Old Trafford aren't the only ones who watch the game. There are millions of supporters who watch Man United from their home, from pubs, and all around the world. And this is incredibly lucrative for Man United. Premier League matches are currently broadcast in the UK by three partners. You've got Sky, BT Sport and Amazon Prime. And outside the UK, they broadcast by other media partners such as NBC in the US and Star Sports in India. But for the right to broadcast these games, the Premier League charges these media partners an absolute load of money. In 2021, the Premier League sold media rights for the next 3 seasons for a whopping £10.4 billion. 5.1 billion will come from Sky, BT and Amazon for the UK rights, whilst 5.3 billion will come from NBC, Star Sports and the other overseas partners. But where do Man United make money from all of this?
Good question.
Well, this £10.4 billion over 3 seasons is then split by all of the Premier League clubs. And if we look at this table here, we can see how much each club received from the Premier League last season. And in general, we can see the higher you finish, the more money you get, which is probably fair.
That sounds fair.
Now, as we can see, United received £168 million from the Premier League last year, which was around 25% of their total revenue. And this means that the Premier League is actually United's biggest customer.
Mind blown.
Now, the second part of broadcasting revenue for United is to do with European competitions. And this is media rights payments, not from the Premier League, but from UEFA for Champions League and the Europa League competitions. And the table below shows us the different payments that are made when teams qualify, win, and progress in both European tournaments. So as we can see, just getting into the top 4 in the Premier League and qualifying for the Champions League brings a club €15.7 million, whilst finishing 5th and qualifying for the Europa League brings in only €3.6 million. So that's a €12 million difference from just one spot. Now on top of that, we can see that every win in the Champions League is also worth around €2 million more than a win in the Europa League. And this demonstrates why clubs like United are so desperate to finish 4th rather than 5th in the Premier League. No wonder Arsene Wenger and the Arsenal board were so content with finishing 4th every year. Now, if we look at this chart, we can see that in 2023, United made around £209 million in broadcasting revenues. And these revenues have trended up nicely over the years as the Premier League and Champions League TV rights have become more and more valuable. Okay, let's move on. Now, the final revenue stream comes from this segment called commercial, which can be split into two parts: sponsorship revenue and retail activities. Now, in terms of sponsorship, Man United is a brand that many companies around the world want to be associated with. With millions of viewers watching their games, millions of fans buying the shirts, companies get a lot of recognition by saying that they're in partnership with Man United. But this recognition does not come cheap. Back in 2019, United's current shirt sponsor, TeamViewer, signed a 5-year contract agreeing to pay Man United £235 million over 5 years, which works out to £47 million per year. And if you thought that was a lot, it doesn't just stop at the main playing kit. Even United's training kit attracts a huge number of sponsors. The current sponsor, Tezos, is paying Man United a whopping £20 million a year to be on the front of the club's training kit. And the chart below shows us that in 2023, United made £189 million in revenue from all of these sponsors wanting to partner with United and get that brand exposure. And this revenue figure has grown really nicely over the last decade, with a little stumble during the pandemic as some sponsors reined in their marketing spend, understandably. Alright, so the second way United makes money from their commercial segment is through retail activities. And this is mainly to do with selling their shirts, but also selling all kinds of United merchandise, like keyrings, posters, and even dog bowls. Now, interestingly, Premier League clubs don't actually make money by selling their shirts.
What do you mean?
They make money by selling the right to sell their shirts. And the two main companies that go about purchasing these rights are two companies that all of us are familiar with, Adidas and Nike. Now, for 13 years, from 2002 to 2015, Nike had the rights to sell Man United shirts, which meant that they would pay United a certain amount every year, and in exchange, they would take the majority of United shirt sales. However, in 2014, Nike didn't renew their contract, and Adidas swooped in with a 10-year deal. And the German giant pays United a whopping £75 million a year, which is a huge rise from the £25 million a year that Nike were paying United. And this mega Adidas contract puts United at the top of the tree versus the other top 6 Premier League clubs when it comes to shirt rights. Now, this chart shows us that in 2023, United made £113 million in retail activities. So we said £75 million from Adidas and around another £40 million or so from selling other merchandise. But the main thing to look at is how revenues jumped in 2015 when United switched from the Nike to the mega Adidas contract. Alright, let's wrap up. We've looked at the 3 main ways United make money: match day, broadcasting, and commercial. And to make things even simpler, we've broken down those 3 segments into this table over here. Now, tomorrow we're going to move down the income statement and look at what kind of costs Man United have as a business and what does this mean for their margins. Because whilst the top line tells us a part of the story, we really need to look at margins and profitability to really understand the business of Man United. So, see you tomorrow.